Guys, welcome to Toilets and Title Sunday Night Live. I'm your host, Jason. It's the same great show as the Roundtable with a great new name. We've got many of the same hosts as we normally have. I'm gonna start below me. A guy who does the main show here on Toilets and Title, the title show on Tuesday nights. I've got Justin. Justin, say hi.
Hi.
Don't take that literally, Justin.
Mr. Personality.
Yeah. No. Hey, how's it going, everybody? I was looking at the show notes, and I don't know why, but why are we talking NFL draft this week?
Oh, it's not the most important thing that's happened in the NFL. I feel like we're going to talk about anything else, I'm sure. Next to Justin, a guy who won't give me as much crap in the intro, the Wednesday night Giants corner, Joe knows. It's Joe.
Absolutely.
How's it going, Joe?
It's a Giants world, and every other NFL team gets to play a little football in it, and that's pretty much it. I'm doing really well, and I am still psyched to talk draft because it just wrapped up. It was such an interesting draft, really crazy, and I'm really happy to just hop in and talk about it with you and the audience, and I'm looking forward to the 2024 draft. I actually did my first mock draft simulation last night, immediately after the first one, the last one ended, just to see if I could put it on Twitter and see the reactions I got. I actually had one person criticize me for my Giants picks. I'm like, are you out of your mind? I'm joking around, buddy.
Yeah, look, if you put it out on Twitter, somebody will complain about it.
Yeah, he was like, have you seen tape on those guys? And I responded, I'm like, actually, no.
Hey, be honest with it, right?
I would have went the other route. I would have been like, yeah, I was on the sidelines. I'm his cousin.
And finally, he hosts Mock Draft Laboratory. I was on the show, still can't say it. And runs all of the mock drafts that we're doing here on Sleeper or on Toilets and Titles. It's the brother from another mother, man of my own heart. It's George. What's going on, George?
Not much. You are absolutely correct. I do run them all on Sleeper. So you absolutely nailed that. Happy to be here. It's Sunday night, real live, rebranding of the show. Super excited. I heard there was some stuff happening in the NFL the last few days. Personally, I wouldn't know about most of it because I took a trip up to Jacksonville, probably at the worst time of the year. For me anyway, to go remodel a bathroom. So, but I made it back. I'm here, and I am just excited to dive into what we got going on tonight.
So giant failure if you didn't put a TV in that bathroom remodel.
I thought about it. Honestly, I asked her if she wanted me to put a TV in there. She said no, and I said okay.
It's a thought that counts.
That's all I can ask.
And then already getting crap from somebody at Toilets Titles. That was an adorable intro for George. Look,
that was Justin.
I know it was Justin. Anyway, before we get into the NFL talk, the main NFL stories, I do want to reach out and wish Toilets Titles thoughts and prayers to Shaq Barrett's family. They lost a child today. It's something that you never want to have as a parent, as a friend, as a family member. As a human being, to lose a 2-year-old. One thing that I noticed today was that the Saints put out a letter after the Buccaneers put out a statement giving their condolences as well. And it's a good reminder for everybody on the internet, everywhere. Like, you may have rivals, you may have like war with people on the field, but what really is important is people in their lives and what's going on. So it was a classy move from the Saints, and we'll continue to wish thoughts and prayers for Shaq Barrett, and hope their family can find some solace. So with that, I want to start talking about our housekeeping items. I want you to check out everything that Toilets Title's doing. From articles to podcasts to live videos, YouTube shorts, the Toilets Title team has something going on all the time. We're doing mock drafts with George, and that, like, we had some tonight. I'm sure he's going to do some throughout the week. We have College Football Nation on Mondays, our title show on Tuesdays. Joe, like I mentioned, has New York Giants Corner on Wednesdays. On the Clock on Thursdays, P2P on Fridays. the Cowboy Show with Coach on Sunday morning. We have this show. Like, if there's a show, if there's a thing to do, we do it. So check all of that out. I especially wanted to shout out Jared, Nino, Coach, Joe, Justin, and everybody else who hopped on. We had live draft coverage over the weekend. It was some of the best draft coverage in the business, and you guys did it super smooth. It came off great, and you guys did a great job. So congratulations to all of you.
That's nice, but all I did was ask Joe what he thought about the players.
And then I just talk and talk and talk and talk.
Look, sometimes being a host, the best thing you can do is ask a question and follow up, and you did that very well, Justin. So good job, bud. It was it was a ton of fun. I didn't get to watch as much of it as I wanted to, but I hopped on every chance that I got, and every time I turned it on, it was professional. So you guys did a great job.
I can say that I appreciated Joe and Justin on on Friday night, because I was driving up to Jacksonville, and the only way I was following the draft was through the Toilets to Titles live stream. I didn't get to watch it, but I got to listen to just about the entire thing before getting there. So
and you stepped in for a little while.
I appreciated that debate with
That's
what
right.
was going on.
That's right. Justin,
kudos to you, Justin and
I were actually a team last year, day 2 again, and Justin I was doing it live, solo here in studio, and Justin was driving around.
I was the one that was working last year and texting and trying to get updates and stuff from Joe, and obviously not driving and texting at the same time.
Absolutely, he was pulling over multiple times.
So then this time it was George coming in for us.
You know what's funny is
I definitely appreciated it. You guys paid it forward.
It's funny because I feel like Justin will pull over to text, but not to pick up a coffin lid. I get it. It's cool.
We still haven't forgiven him for that.
It's a long callback for those that have been with us a while. So the other thing I wanted to mention before we jump into the news, you can find us on all our YouTube channels. You can go watch all our videos, like, subscribe, follow. Go to toiletstitle.com to find our articles. Become a member of our Patreon at patreon.com/toiletstitles. You can get into our gilded chat. At $3 a month gets you into that chat. $5 a month gets you an automatic spot in our listener league, the Frankenstein League. $7.50 a month gets you one-on-one advice, and then we have tiers above $7.50 if you want to do all that. It's the gilded chat is very cool. We have over 100 people now. I don't have the exact number of the last count, but over 100 people in the gilded chat now, and it's just growing exponentially as the draft went on. It just grew and grew and grew. So very cool thing to be in. So patreon.com/toiletstitle and join us there. All right, guys, we're going to get into the news. And last week I specifically bragged that we barely talked about one quarterback and didn't talk about the other one. And just to spite me, they both one signed and the other got traded. So we're going to start with what seems like news from a year ago because we had the draft. But Lamar Jackson signed a 5-year, $260 million contract with Baltimore Ravens, including $185 million guaranteed, an average annual salary of $52 million a year. In 2023, he's going to earn a base salary of $32 million and will count for $32 million against the cap. Now, he's currently got the largest QB contract in the market. He also didn't have to give 10% to his agent. What do you guys think? Fair deal based off the current market? And I'm going to start with George.
I think it's a great deal. So I knew once Jalen Hurts signed his contract, that was going to be the standard in which the Lamar deal was based upon. Everybody knew that the last contract that was signed before Jalen Hurts, the Deshaun Watson one, was not going to be what they based Lamar's contract off. That one was such an outlier that there was just no way you could use that as the base for Lamar's contract. So I knew once Hurts signed that new deal, which reset the market for the most money ever, that it wouldn't take long for Lamar to come in because it gave a more reasonable base on what his contract should be. So I think it's a great deal for both teams. 5 years, he's locked up. They've done did him a favor. They brought in OBJ. Apparently, Antonio Brown, we're going to get there, but apparently he's going to the Ravens as well. They drafted a wide receiver for him in the draft, so they're doing everything they can to address the receiving core out there in Baltimore. I love it for Baltimore. I love it for Lamar. I've been a stan the whole time saying Lamar's not getting out of Baltimore, that he would remain a Raven. Even when others were saying no, he wanted to be traded. If he wanted to be there, he would have resigned already. And I steadfast said, no, they're not letting this guy go. And I'm glad to see that they were able to work it out.
Justin, fair trade or fair deal?
Yeah, it's a fair deal. He's clearly not the best quarterback in the league. He's clearly not he probably isn't deserving of the most money in the league, but that's the business, right? So it's either pay him to be the next biggest quarterback, or it's let all your fans become Colts fans and not have a good quarterback for several years until you happen to get lucky on one on a rookie contract. So I mean, both sides, one of the sides had to do it, and the other side gladly signed.
And Joe, you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's fair. I think it's I guess fair is maybe, I don't know if it's the right word to use, but I don't think it's crazy at all. He's an elite weapon as a quarterback. His basically, for me, it's the concerns with Lamar. Just it's injury. It's not, for me, it's not passing. It's injuries. But he's your guy, and he's a quarterback, and there's no guarantee at all if you move on from him that Henley, or Hundley, whatever the quarterback's name. He's a special player, and you know what? Your fan base loves him. He seems like a good character guy and everything. Hands down, I would have done it if I was the Baltimore Ravens front office. I'm glad it's all taken care of.
So the funny thing about these deals is they always sound so expensive at the time the contract is signed. But look at, Pat Mahomes was signed a couple years ago, and his contract seems reasonable by today's standards, right? Like now he seems like almost a deal when you look at his yearly and his guarantees. And then when you consider the salary caps going up by $15 million a year, in a couple of years, this isn't going to be that big of a percentage against the cap. And that's what I think we should start looking at, is percentage against the cap versus overall number. The overall number is super sensational, but percentage against the cap is where it's at, because that's what tells you where you can go get other players and where you can't. So I think over the next few years, it's going to look like a better and better deal, especially as you sign Burrow and Herbert and the next guys after that. Like those deals are going to be bigger. And then, this deal is just going to be an average quarterback deal in a couple of years. It's a ton of money.
Yeah. It's not going to be a ceiling. It's not going to be a ceiling deal, like ceiling up here for 5 years. It's probably like the ceiling contract for a year, it's probably it.
Yeah, because like Jason said, Burrow and Herbert are both going to smash that ceiling on what the highest deal is. And then a couple of years after that, you're going to have Trevor Lawrence is going to be up, and he's going to become the next highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So it's just a cycle.
Yeah, assuming his trajectory keeps going up, right? Like that's what we expect from him. So, okay. I did also want to talk about now that he's signed. It seems like he's got the best weapons he's ever had. He's got Flowers. He's got OBJ. He's Todd Monken's come in as an offensive coordinator, who's a guy who can be a little more creative with play calling. If J.K. Dobbins is healthy, that's going to be very big for them. And they still have Rashad Bateman again if he stays healthy. Like those are three solid wide receivers. And again, George alluded to something we'll talk about in a little bit with Antonio Brown. But assuming everything but Antonio Brown is true, because I won't assume that. This is the best set of weapons he's got. So going around the room, because I still don't feel like they're the best in their division, let alone the conference. So George, what are your expectations for the Ravens? Can they challenge what I think is the best in the division, which is the Bengals? And if they can challenge them, if they can't challenge them, can they challenge for a wild card spot in an AFC conference that is heads and shoulders above the NFC now?
So that is the $1 million question. Like the AFC, that conference is absolutely loaded with very, very good teams. I do think they can challenge the Bengals. I will get to your question. I think they can challenge the Bengals for that division. If that team remains healthy, which is a big if for any team, right? Like every team goes through and suffers injuries. I mean, it was just a couple of years ago, like the 49ers only won 3 games. And that was because they just suffered an ungodly amount of injuries. So it happens to teams every year. Last year, the Ravens suffered a ton of injuries. If they can remain healthy, I absolutely believe they can challenge. They got a good quarterback. They got a good wide receiving core. Their defense is what they've always prided themselves on, and I think that they can hang with every team in the AFC. So I do believe they are a playoff caliber team, and I do believe that they can challenge for their division. I think the division comes down to them and the Bengals.
Joe, do you think they challenge the Bengals this year?
Yeah, I think it's going to be – I'm not discounting the Steelers at all either, too. Remember, they had their key injuries with – that's when they started losing games and when they lost both Watt and Fitzpatrick. And near the end of the season, both of those guys came back and the Steelers made a push. So I know we all like Lamar more than Pickett. It's not a knock against Pickett, but Lamar is Lamar. But I absolutely 100% believe they can compete with the Bengals. And the Bengals are an elite team. But they've been like, one of the heaviest hitters, elite over the past 2 seasons. But I think Baltimore absolutely can compete. But like George said, as long as they stay healthy, and that's been a huge problem of, yes, every team could go through injuries, but some teams go through it more often than others. And Baltimore is one of them. They got decimated last year, and not just the quarterback, but especially the quarterback. But if they stay relatively healthy, heck yeah, they'll be competing with Cincinnati. That'll be a great match.
And Justin, you have to be careful here, given your wife's love affair with Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So, what you got going on over there?
Yeah, the Bengals are going to win a damn game. No. So I do not think it is. I'm being honest here. This isn't just because Lori's a Bengals fan. I really don't think that the Ravens can compete in this division this year.
How dare you?
Even with the weapons, and the reason why is because before the running back injuries over the last 2 years, Lamar was one of the best in the game. Even in the passing game, he was way more accurate. He was way more efficient. And then you get those injuries, and obviously that takes away that aspect of the game. But a couple of years ago, the other teams in the division were down, and right now the Bengals defense looks to be even improving on top of what they were last year. Just as you said, when the Steelers defensive guys got back, they looked like they were among the top best defenses in the league. And then they got a couple of bye games against the Browns. But the point is, because of those other 2 teams, I don't think that they can really compete at that level with those defenses anymore, because of the fact that I'm not saying that Lamar is one-dimensional, but when you take away that run game, then you can expose him for the weaker of the 2 aspects of his game.
I agree with you there. Well, with that though, Justin, you're the only one to say they can't compete with the Bengals. Do you think they still make a wild card spot?
I think there's a good chance, because this, like you guys said, this is a really good division. So I think there's a good chance they could make a wild card spot for sure.
George, you were going to comment, and I'll put up Lori's comment here.
Yeah, so I think they can. Listen, they competed with the Bengals last year. The Bengals won 12 games last year. The Ravens won 10.
Well, look, Justin, don't get up and get excited. She says on camera. That means not in person.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. All right, true. I'm taking my computer.
No, but
that would make it interesting.
The Bengals won 12 games last year, and the Ravens won 10, and that was without Lamar Jackson for a good chunk of those games at the end of the year. So I absolutely believe, they can compete within that division for the top spot in the division if they remain healthy. The biggest thing is, it's football. So can they remain healthy? That's the question.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's a question for both teams. It's all teams,
yep.
right? Like it's been the Ravens the last couple of years, but that could change, and it could be the Bengals, it could be anybody. So, health is an important factor, obviously, but talent on the field, I think the Bengals have it all over them, but I do think the Ravens will compete for a wild card spot. All right. So we're going to shift over to the other quarterback news from this past week. Aaron Rodgers was finally traded. And I'm going to pop up the deal here. Aaron Rodgers was finally traded from the Packers to the Jets. We all knew it was coming. It just took a little bit of time for the Jets to give in to what the Packers wanted. That's the only way I can claim that this trade happened, because it looks like the Packers got everything they wanted. And the Jets didn't even get like protection other than the fact that Aaron Rodgers may get hurt at some point in the season. And then if he doesn't play 65%, they don't get a first round pick next year. They get a second round pick. So only protection is if he doesn't play this year, and not if he retires after this year. So the trade actually is the Jets received the 15th pick, the 170th pick, and Aaron Rodgers. Green Bay received the 13th pick, the 42nd pick, the 207th pick, and next year's first round pick. Like I said, unless Aaron Rodgers doesn't play 65% of the snap. So the first question for everybody here, and we're going to go reverse order from last time. George, was this trade fair for both teams? Was it better for Green Bay, or was it good for the Jets?
So the only way that this is going to be good for the Jets is if they make the playoffs and they win at least one game in the playoffs. That's the only way this trade works out to be good for the Jets. Within the division, and listen, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I got the hat on right now. I still believe, even after trading for Aaron Rodgers, the Jets are the third best team in the AFC East. So unless three teams can get into the playoffs from the AFC East, I don't see it being a good trade for the Jets. I love what the Packers got. The no protection on that first round pick next year other than him playing 65% of the snaps, is fantastic. If he decides the Jets have a really rough season and this season doesn't go the way Aaron Rodgers wants it to go, or he gets injured, or the Jets struggle and he gets frustrated with the New York media, because they're nothing like the media in Green Bay. That's a whole different piece. You start going south or sideways in New York, that media is going to tear you up. So if it goes just worst case scenario and he ends up retiring next year and he still plays 65% of the snaps, they get that first, and it could be a 12 to 17 range on the first. Like, that's a smash for the Packers. So I love it for the Packers.
All right, Joe, what do you got? Is the fair trade?
I think it was totally fair, assuming that he plays like the length of the contract, which I believe is still like 3 or 4 years. If that's the case, if he's still playing, I think it's completely fair. I saw as soon as the trade was consummated or announced, I should say the deal, then I saw the word fleeced trending in Twitter feed, and I was scrolling through it, and people were like, "Oh man, they Jets got fleeced," and I'm like, dude, this is a very super talented team whose window has opened up, and you're trading for not just a really good quarterback, but a legendary quarterback. And I think last year was an anomaly. I don't think this is a Russ Wilson step back, which I got to bet. I don't think you're going to see 2016 Russ Wilson anymore. I got a bad feeling about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I think Aaron Rodgers, like last year, was kind of like just an anomaly. And this is a smart, savvy, even if he's only like 90% or 85% of what we're used to with Aaron Rodgers, he's an intelligent, savvy quarterback, like when Peyton Manning went to the Broncos. And he's got a lot of talent around him now. He's got a good amount of talent. They even brought in more talent this draft class on the offensive side of the ball. They already have a very good defense. This team's window has opened, and I think they are as good as any other team in that division, including Buffalo, including Miami. And so I think it was a fair deal. I think the only pick that really matters here is the first round pick. It's who really cares about the second round pick, the fifth round pick, and it was one first round pick. And there's so many first round picks that totally, don't pan out or just are mediocre. It's one first round pick.
Well, so I do want to talk about the first round pick that they gave up this year. So Justin, I'll get to you in a second because Joe brought up the first round pick. Now, where this went horribly wrong for the Jets is they traded back from 13 to 15. Now, we all know the Jets' offensive line is terrible. Having Aaron Rodgers behind that offensive line, probably not going to be a great thing. So the reason this went horribly for the Jets is because going from 13 to 15 gave Pittsburgh the opportunity to jump up to 14 and take Broderick Jones, who was it was the Patriots screwing the Jets, which George pointed out to me the night it happened, by trading back, but it gave the Steelers the opportunity to come take one of the last, big four offensive tackles that were supposed to be in the first round. So because they moved back, because they gave up this pick, they lost out on Broderick Jones possibly because the Patriots were not taking an offensive lineman there. So the Jets at 15 thought they could have him, and at 13 they would have had him, but lost out on him. So that's where I think like that first round pick, that this year's first round pick swap really did kind of hurt the Jets. I'll let
I
you
don't feel
comment.
that way.
Okay.
I don't think it was a big deal. I really,
Well,
listen,
that-
they
and
probably would have went with the top end tackle, but
they
they
also
did get a really good center in the in the second round, and they did get an offensive tackle, I think, out of Pitt, I think in the third round, maybe fourth round. But obviously it's on Broderick Jones, who I think is absolutely one of the best tackles in this draft. But you got a really super capable quarterback, which you did not have last year with the crappy quarterbacks they had. And don't give me this Mike White nonsense. They were like 7-3 at some point, all right,
Yeah.
until they decided to insert their crappy rookie or second-year player, all right. So they got Aaron friggin' Rodgers. I'm not saying this is 2000 Aaron Rodgers, but I'm taking Aaron Rodgers over the young tackle who's completely unproven.
So I'll agree. Like the win here is not starting Zach Wilson this season. Like that's the win, right? But I don't know. Like I said, that doesn't make the trade fair. It just means that like they made the trade and got the guy. Justin, I'm going to let you jump in. You can talk about any of the stuff we've already discussed, where they're going to fall in the AFC East, where they're going to fall in the AFC in general, the trade, whether it was fair or not, and how they lost out on Broderick Jones.
Whether it was a fair trade or not, I think, yeah, sure, it was fair. Whether it was a good trade or not, I think long term, yeah, sure, this was probably bad, maybe, but in the short term, I think it was a move that they still had to do because look at where they finished last year. The reason they're drafting in the middle rounds is because they have enough to win some games, and then I believe they also traded away their first round, but it wouldn't have been super high up in the draft anyway. But regardless, I guess my point is right now they're starting Zach, and you have really talented running backs, really talented wide receivers. You've got an upcoming defense. Like this team, they go from not having any opportunity or any chance at all to at least competing. And in the NFL, all you have to do is be able to just compete. Then you get momentum. Then teams get injuries at the wrong time, and then the next thing you know, you're in the playoffs and you're pulling something off. But you don't even have the opportunity to pull it off with Zach at the helm. So I just think it's something that they had to do.
Absolutely. All right. I think we've beat that horse to death. Luckily, we probably won't have to talk about it again until next week. So we're going to move on to the next story, which in a bit of odd news, Antonio Brown announced his return to the Baltimore Ravens. Only no one told Baltimore. He's not showing up on the team's website or their roster or their transaction list, and the team hasn't commented on Brown's tweet. I mean, there's not a lot to talk about here except for Antonio doing Antonio things. Just give me the odds, because we don't have to talk about it for a long time. Odds that Antonio Brown is on the Ravens comes week 1. Justin.
I'm going to keep it low just because I don't think that any other team's going to take on that burden, to be honest with you. So I'm going to keep it kind of low. I'm going to go about 12.3%.
12.3%. All right, George.
Yeah, I'm going to go lower than Justin. I'm going to go like 0.06%.
Oh, 0.6. Okay. I'm going to give it the highest of both of you. I'm going to give it 20%. Like there was smoke around that rumor last year, I want to say, with Lamar Jackson trying to get Brown to come over there. I think there's smoke there. I think it's probably him talking to somebody like Lamar Jackson, not actually to the team. But don't you think if Lamar Jackson says, "Look, I want Antonio Brown," that team's going to bring him in, and they don't have a lot of money, but they don't have to pay him much. Joe, I don't know how much
I heard it all. And I don't know what percentages, but man, I want it to happen so badly. I want Antonio Brown to speak this into existence. Can you imagine? Hey, if this were like 2015, he had OBJ and Antonio Brown on the same team. Holy cow, those are like the two best wide receivers back then. Obviously, it's 8 years later. That's not the situation. But these are two guys, man, where Antonio hasn't played like in a year or whatever. OBJ hasn't played in a year and whatever. But they're so damn talented that you get them on the field that I would not be surprised if they, if they completely ball out. So I kind of want to see it happen because it'll be a soap opera too. Everyone's gonna be waiting every week, like, okay, what's gonna happen now?
Is he gonna take his shirt off and run into the end zone this weekend?
Listen, when he took his shirt off and ran out the end zone, that was not just him running out the end zone. That was running out of the NFL. No team is going to bring him back in, knowing he quit in the middle of a game, live on national television. That's not.
Baltimore should kick the tires. Say, hey man, how serious were you, Antonio?
Listen, they kicked those tires in 2020 and they didn't sign him.
I know. Yeah, you know what? Maybe they just planned like, hey, we're gonna have him on the team, but we are gonna contingency plan that he's not gonna be here the whole season. He might not even make the team, and I don't know, man. That would be a heck of an arsenal for Lamar.
He'd have less
we
excuses.
All can agree. We can all agree that Antonio Brown is just absolutely crazy. He's lost his mind, and just because he tweeted out a picture of himself saying, "I'm joining the Ravens," much to the surprise of the Baltimore Ravens and anybody that's employed by them, all of a sudden we're going to believe he's actually coming back to sign with and play with them. No, it's not happening. Antonio Brown is just crazy. That's all.
I bet he's in game shape.
Do you think so? You think when they saw that tweet, like everybody in the office called each other and said, "Okay, did you talk to AB? No, did you talk to AB?" Like trying to figure out, all right, who's the crazy MFer that told? Who's the crazy MFer that said AB could come over?
They got fired.
I will say this though. I think if there's one organization. I'm sorry, George. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe. Sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, if there's one organization left that I think this could work for a full season, I think it's the Ravens. I mean, it didn't work out with Tom Brady, which I was shocked about. But if it could work out for one full season, I think the Ravens are the organization that it could work out with.
It didn't work out for Tom Brady twice. Once on the Patriots and then on the Buccaneers. So, all right. The last little bit of news before we get into the draft is that the NFL announced that their schedule should come out on May 11th. The NFL does a great job at spreading this kind of stuff out where you're constantly talking about the NFL free agency period, then the draft, and then the schedule release, and then, more free agency period, and then games. And so May 11th is when the schedule is going to be out. I'm sure we'll have long shows about who gets the most primetime games and who got the shaft and like who's traveling the most and so May 11th, guys.
That traveling the most is going to be the Dolphins. Almost every year we have to travel the most because we got to go from Miami up to New York, up to New England, and up to Buffalo. So just interdivision games every year, add the mileage up real fast.
I have to feel like Jacksonville probably is the most just because they go to London so much.
You mean the London Jaguars?
Oh man! All right,
hey, listen, no. So Jacksonville's actually been good, so they don't get to go to London anymore. Like we don't send our good teams to London. London gets the scraps.
I think this year Kansas City is going to London. I think this is the year that Kansas City goes. So like we are sending a chance.
You just confirmed.
They just
confirmed Patrick Mahomes is going to tear his ACL in week 1. Thanks, Jason.
Well, and you know who's going to be the quarterback? Blaine Gabbert.
That's right. They did. Speaking of news,
local hero Blaine Gabbert. No, dude, he actually saved some people's lives out boating on his jet ski. Yep. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, so we got through the chores of the NFL week. Now we get to talk about the draft that happened this weekend. I know Justin and Joe might be tired of talking about the draft because they did it for multiple straight days in a row.
Never tired.
I mean, there's some obvious questions we want to ask here. But, we talked about beforehand all the trades that could happen. We had less player trades than we thought, given that Trey Lance is still with the Niners. DeAndre Hopkins is still with the Cardinals. But we still did have a bunch of trades. DeAndre Swift found an unexpected new home. The Texans ended up with 2 of the top 3 picks. The first thing I want to talk about is everyone's favorite pick from the draft this weekend. It doesn't have to be the first day. It can be any day. Joe, what was your favorite pick of the draft this weekend?
There were a lot of picks that I liked a lot, but the one that I'd have to put just maybe a little ahead of, I'd say my 1B might be Jalen Carter. I mean, the Eagles getting Jalen Carter at pick number 10. Like, I remember, people were like, or at least non-Eagles fans, Giants fans, Cowboys fans maybe were like, oh man, they didn't get Bijan Robinson. Oh my God, but they got Jalen Carter. Oh my, that's even worse actually. But man, to land Jalen Carter when you're already I know they didn't win the Super Bowl last year, but I would say on paper they're the most talented team. To land Jalen Carter at number 10, that was awesome. But my favorite pick, Justin's probably still not crazy about the pick, but I love Anthony Richardson at number 3 to the Colts. I love it.
I'll let Justin comment on that, but I have to say that's probably my favorite pick based on Justin's comment. So, Justin, we're getting to your least favorite picks. Let's talk about your favorite pick before we get there. What was your favorite pick from the weekend?
I think my favorite pick was probably, and just because of how late it was, Michael Mayer to the Raiders. He went early in the second round, pick 35. So they kind of needed that big man, like they lost Waller to New York, and then they were going to lose Moreno, right? Isn't that Moreau? Foster Moreau.
Yeah.
And then they caught they
did lose him.
Yeah, they lost him.
Yeah, but I'm just saying they were already going to lose him before the injury issue or the news. But he's gone, so now they really need a tight end. I like the landing spot. I like the fact that he's got Jimmy Garoppolo there. Garoppolo has a lot of games where he leans on his tight ends when he has a tight end. A lot of people don't realize that because of his time with the Patriots. A lot of his starting games, he also did not have Gronk. So a lot of the time, but anyway, he's very effective with his tight end. So that's why I like the pick. I like Michael Mayer going to the Raiders.
George, favorite pick?
My favorite pick for selfish reasons is going to be Broderick Jones to the Steelers. I absolutely love the fact that New England traded back and allowed the Steelers to jump up in front of the Jets just to steal Broderick Jones from them. So that was my favorite pick for selfish reasons. Overall, my favorite pick was Bijan Robinson to the Falcons. He could not – I love what Atlanta's doing. They built up their defense in free agency. They've got Kyle Pitts. They got Drake London. They added Bijan Robinson. They are doing the same thing that a lot of the other successful teams have done. If Desmond Ridder is not it for quarterback, they can go out and try to trade for a veteran quarterback to get them over the top. That team just needs a quarterback, really, and they could be a very dangerous team in a very, very weak NFC division overall. So I absolutely love them grabbing a complete game changer who will significantly help the quarterback as well, because you take all the pressure off the quarterback, just hand it to this stud right behind you, 15, 20 times a game, and let him do what he does. So I love the Bijan Robinson pick at number
8. So selfishly, I'm going to say Cody Mock is my favorite pick because the memes that came in Tampa when he was drafted, between him and the other red offensive line, the memes that came from the players. The thing you can tell, and if you want to see a great interview of Cody, Toilets Title did one at the Senior Bowl. Coach Sheps did one. We've got it on our website. It's on our YouTube page. Go check it out. Cody is a hardworking, honest, like humble guy who is nasty as hell on the field. And that played super well with the Buccaneers players who all welcomed him with open arms, but with some of the greatest memes on draft day. So selfishly, I love that pick. And then I messaged both Joe and Justin because my favorite pick outside of that was Deuce Vaughn to Dallas. And not so much because I think Deuce Vaughn's going to be, I don't, it's not that I think Deuce Vaughn's going to be something super special in the NFL, although he's a good player. He could be. But watching his dad, who's a personnel scout in Dallas, call his son and say, "Hey, do you want to come play for us?" was a special moment for that night. And normally I'm not a giant fan of the Dallas Cowboys, but that was a cool moment and a cool move. So that took like of the weekend, that was my favorite thing that came out of it.
Yeah,
cool. I got to watch that interview today, and it is moving. Like when his dad's asked him, "Hey, do you want to come to work with me next week?" Like that was just as a father, like that. I think that would just be the absolute coolest thing to be able to do is to call your son and say, "Hey, do you want to come to work with me next week?" Knowing that you're working for a professional football team. So
you know what? You could even say April 27th is National Bring Your Child to Work Day. It really is.
Yep,
that's great.
Well, I guess we passed April 27th, but you could have said something to that effect. That would have been funny.
So I'm going to get to everybody's least favorite pick, and I feel like I have to start with Justin here, a man who was on the Toilets to Titles live show and immediately left after this pick was taken. I think we all know which pick Justin's going to talk about. So Justin, go ahead.
So my absolute least favorite pick in the draft was in the third round. It was pick 81. It was Tyjae Spears going to Tennessee, because now as a Colts fan, I've got to watch Spears tear up that Indianapolis Colts defense twice a year. That man, he's a lot better than people give him credit for. He's so flashy and so quick, and we got to see him at the Senior Bowl. And I tell you what, that he's dynamite. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and don't get me wrong, he's no Derrick Henry. All right, he's going to spell Derrick Henry very effectively, though. He's going to get a lot of opportunity in that backfield early on, and my Colts are going to be on the back end of that. But obviously, you were referring to the Anthony Richardson pick, and I have had time to step back and consider it and think about it. And while I still think that it was not the best move at that point, I feel like personally, I don't think that they can continue to waste another year to try to build Richardson. But if they believe in him that much and that's their guy, then what can you do? I would have probably traded back a little bit because Richardson wasn't really that guy to me. But hopefully I'm wrong. I looked at him as another Trey Lance, a guy that got a lot of attention leading up to the draft, like out of nowhere, it seemed like. And there were times where he was up and he was down, but at least when I really started paying attention to the college players with 3 months to go, he wasn't going to be an early first round pick anywhere. And I just kept hearing more and more good stuff and more good stuff. And it's just, that's what happened with Trey Lance. And I never was a believer in Trey Lance either. But at the end of the day, he is our quarterback. I have to root for him, so I'm going to root for him. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope Joe's right. Joe tried to lift me up as much as possible on day 2, and I'm showing.
I believe it, man.
I'm showing growth. I sat with my counselor on Friday night, and he helped talk me through this personal issue, and we're going to get there.
Problems, Justin.
Just like so we're going to get there together.
Well, so I might send you back down into a shame spiral here, so hopefully I don't trigger you, but I am going to ask you. So you wanted Will Levis, and he obviously fell, which could be validating, right? Like that could be validating for a team like the Colts who didn't take him, and then how many other teams that were quarterback needy didn't take him. But then Tennessee traded up again. One of your team's rivals, one of their division mates. So you're going to have to face him multiple times a year.
Yeah.
For what could be
Spears the ball. Yeah,
exactly. So, was there for at least a little while a little bit of like you felt better because the rest of the NFL saw what the Colts saw, and then did that get destroyed because the Titans grabbed him?
No, I don't feel bad at all. I mean, quarterbacks, or I mean, it didn't make me feel better at all. I should say that because quarterbacks sometimes hit these slides and then they come back and they're great quarterbacks, just like a lot of people already knew they were. So I do feel strongly that the Colts are very heavy on Will Levis. But I will say this much. It wasn't until, because I knew the guy was arrogant, right? Like he's a quarterback. He has some level of arrogance. You see that much. Okay, sure. I didn't realize that the guy was as arrogant as he is. I didn't realize it was as bad as it is. So I'm at the point now where I'm not okay with where they took AR. I feel like maybe he could have slipped a little bit more, so they could have traded back to get him. And if they didn't, then maybe you still get another quarterback later. Hendon Hooker in the second round would have made a whole lot of sense, or even trade up to get Hendon Hooker. Or ride out Minshew, even though he's going to do crap for you, and then you have a really good pick in next year's draft, and you try it again because you didn't get one of the top guys in this year's draft. There were just so many other ways that I probably would have tried to play this. But also, I'm not comparing myself to Chris Ballard. So he knows, hopefully he knows something. The guy has, especially in the later rounds, has done a great job of building and stacking good young players.
Well, we got it out from Joe. He feels, or from Justin there. I can tell on his face he feels a little bit better. Joe's been helping him, which Lori says that Joe could be a therapist. So thank you, Lori. Appreciate
I've been
that.
told that before.
I mean, look, you're a very good listener, Joe, and I think that's what it is. But Joe, because you're such a good listener, we're going to go ahead and let you talk now. What was your least favorite pick of the weekend?
Jeez, I mean.
Now, with the caveat that we don't really know how any of these players are going to do till they get on the field, right?
Guys, I don't think you know what? I'll tell you what. Maybe it'll sound crazy. It's not the player; it's what was done to get the player. I wasn't a big fan of the Houston trade up to get Will Anderson. It didn't make any sense to me to trade in next year's first round pick for, and nothing against Will Anderson. I think he's going to be a very good player. We thought the same thing about Chase Young, and I'm not picking on just edges or defensive ends. It could be any player. Like I just don't like making a move up for any player unless it's a quarterback, or unless you're a team that's totally stacked and you've got one glaring hole, and that center is just that really good number one center in the draft is sitting there, and you can get that guy and plug him, and your team's totally complete. Something like that, okay, but. Otherwise, I just don't like it. And Houston's, basically kind of like a ground zero of a rebuild. So,
well, and it's not just the move up though. It's like how much they moved up and how much they gave up, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Jumping, like the Pittsburgh Steelers jumping up and grabbing Broderick Jones. I'm gonna say it again. They gave up like a 4th round pick or whatever. Fine.
That's it. It's what I mean is what they gave up.
Yeah.
To get up, and it's nothing against Will Anderson.
No, look, Will Anderson might be the right move. CJ and Stroud may be the wrong move. Who knows? They both could be the wrong move. We don't know any of that. But what they had to give up, and I saw George make a motion, so I'm gonna let him talk about it because I think this is his pick too. So I'll let George talk about it before I run away with this. But George, go ahead and talk about it since it's yours as well.
Yeah, I didn't like this move at all, and I agree 100% with Joe. It's not necessarily anything against Will Anderson. Like I think he's going to be a great player in the league, but I don't like what Houston had to give up to go from 12 to 3. Now they wanted to go out and they made a splash in the draft, and you commend a team for that, right? But to the package that they gave up the number 12 pick, so they moved from 12 to 3. They gave up a 2nd round pick, which was number 33 overall. And that was essentially like the 32nd pick in the draft because there was one team didn't draft in the first round. So to give up the number 33 pick, it's basically a second first round pick. And then they gave up their first round pick next year, which should be, probably around if this team is even decent, it's probably going to be like an 8 to 15 pick. Like they're going to have a top end of the draft pick next year. Now they also have a first round pick next year, which is the Cleveland Browns. I would like it a little bit better if they gave up the Cleveland Browns pick because you assume the Browns are going to finish with a better record than the Houston Texans. So and they gave up a third round pick next year. So they gave up a ton to move up to get Will Anderson. And when you're a team that is in the middle of a rebuild, like I get it, you want to get your sorry, I was confused by what Andrew said. Which team lost the pick? Oh, that was the Dolphins, my friend. Because we brought a couple guys on a yacht and talked to them. But it was it's just to give up that much when you're a team in a rebuild. Like I get it, you want to have a leader on your defense, you want to have a leader on the offense, which is the quarterback. Like for a team that's rebuilding, you want those cornerstone pieces. But this is totally different than the 49ers giving up 3 first rounders to move up to get from 12 to 3 to get Trey Lance. Like they moved up to grab a quarterback. And B, like we knew the 49ers were better than what their record were. They just suffered a rash of injuries that year. And so we knew, okay, they gave up their 3 first round picks, but you're guessing, and most likely, and it worked out that way, that they were later in the round first round picks because they made the playoffs each of the following years. And one of the years I believe they even went to the Super Bowl. So like,
right.
Or at least not Super Bowl, I'm sorry, the NFC Championship game. So at least they're like later in the round picks. So I don't like Houston giving up essentially 3 first round picks and a third round pick next year to move up this year. It's just for a team in a rebuild, it made no sense.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. They could have given up very little and gone up and gotten Jalen Carter. Now they had no way of knowing that the draft was going to fall that way, right? But like, they didn't have to do what they did to get to get a stud on the defense. So
right.
I think that's my biggest issue with it. If I had to pick my worst pick, and it's very chalk, it's what everybody talked about. It's Jahmyr Gibbs is my least favorite pick of the whole draft. And it's not because I dislike Jahmyr Gibbs. It's not because they had Swift on the team. They obviously weren't happy with Swift. They moved him pretty quickly. So it wasn't that I dislike the player or the situation. It's where they picked him at 12. They could have had their pick of a bunch of different players that still had great first round talent. They have 18. They could have easily grabbed him there. They could have grabbed him in the second round because maybe, just maybe, somebody would have come up in the late first round, but it doesn't seem likely that 12 is the spot where they had to have him. Now, I want to love anybody, and I've been with my wife for a long time, and I love her very much. I want to love anybody as much as it looks like that team hates DeAndre Swift, because when they made that pick, the celebration they had was incredible. Yeah. For making the worst pick in the NFL draft, they celebrated like they won the championship. And
well, I know maybe they were celebrating. Maybe they were celebrating that they just won the worst pick of the year award.
Listen,
that's what the celebration was for. We did it.
They did it for sure. Okay, so that's the worst picks. Let's focus. Let's focus on the positive again. So, what team had the best overall draft? Now, not single pick. What? And again, caveat of we don't really know because they haven't played a game of football yet. But what team do you guys feel like had the best draft? George, we'll start with you on this one.
So you and I talked a little bit about this earlier. Even though the fact that we're going to give them the worst pick of the draft, because they had so many picks, and I love what they were able to do with those picks. I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions. They added Jahmyr Gibbs at running back. They added Jack Campbell, the linebacker. They added Sam Laporta at tight end. They added Brian Branch in the second round at safety, who was an absolute stud. In the third round, they came back and got Hendon Hooker, who is going to be a great replacement probably as early as next year for Jared Goff. They also added Broderick Martin, the defensive tackle, in the third round. Like, just because the over of abundance of picks that they had, and the fact that they filled not just positions of need for their team right now, but they also filled positions on their team for positions of need for next year. I gotta give it up to the Lions. I love the draft that they had.
And the thing you and I talked about before the show, before we started, is, and I agree, it was gonna be my pick as well. So I'm just gonna get it out of the way now while we're talking about it. Everybody's going to look at that first round and be like, okay, that they can't be the first, that they can't be the best because of what they did in the first round. But here's the thing. They got first round talent with Brian Branch in the second. They got what many people talked about, a trade up at the end of the first round to get Hendon Hooker in the third. So you got 2 first round players, even if you didn't use your first round picks on them. You got Laporta, who was a second round pick, and then you get the running back that probably should have been a second round pick, even though you did it in the first. You still got the talent you needed out of the draft. You just kind of did it in a weird order. So people are going to look at that and go, okay, they weren't super successful. Maybe they could have done more, but they killed day 2, which erased some of the sins of day 1.
Yep.
Joe, do you agree?
I love how you put that, Jason, in terms of like the reordering, and yeah, I saw that earlier today. I'm like, you're so darn right. And yeah, listen, I've got probably a 3-way tie but I agree with you. I love the Lions draft class. So I probably have a 3-way tie on who had the best draft classes, and I'll try to make it quick. I think Philadelphia did a really, really good job as always, and the top heaviness of their first round picks, like Jalen Carter, possibly the best player in this draft, best talent. Pick number 30, they got Nolan Smith, who's a very special outside linebacker, and then they follow that up too with I'm really not that familiar with Tyler Steen, but what I love is that in the what is it, the second round or is it the third round? They got Tyler Steen. Yeah, third round they got Tyler Steen. Here they are.
They got Tyler Steen. They got Tyler Steen
Sidney
at
Brown.
Pick 65 and Sidney Brown at pick 66.
Yeah. And so so Tyler Steen, what I just like about Philadelphia is smartly every year they will use like a top 3, meaning first, second, third round pick on replenishing their offensive line. I love it. They got a really good safety in Sidney Brown, and then they got also I think in the third round, and then they got Keely Ringo in the fourth round, which I think is which I saw people talking about him being a possible late first round pick. I'm like, no. But for a fourth round, I thought that was incredible value. They got a backup quarterback in Tanner McKee. That's a really good draft class there. I like McKee. And then you look everything you said about the Lions, absolutely. And that front office, man, over the past 3 years, that Lions front office, holy cow. And here's my other one. Justin, I'm looking at you. I love the Indianapolis Colts draft class. You guys got a boatload of talent. You had a boatload of picks, and you got a boatload of talent. I think top line by a potential future superstar quarterback potential. As long as he's a film rat and a guy who's coachable and smart, they could put him in a position to succeed. I think he's got a really good chance to succeed at a high level. But your other picks, I think your team really hit it out of the park with that draft.
Yeah, I agree too. I think I mean, even with me not liking the way that the AR pick went down, you take that pick out of it, I still think they did an incredible job top to bottom. So the fact that he is a big boomer bust player and there's that potential, that opportunity that he could hopefully make the Colts competitive again, I agree. It was a great draft. I was going to go a little bit different route. I wasn't going to be a homer until you got me talking about them. I was actually going to go with the Tennessee Titans because I really do like the talent, especially in the top half of that draft. Those first 3 picks alone, they really needed to help bolster that offensive line a little bit more. You've got a couple years left in Derrick Henry if you keep him. If not, you got Tajay Spears now. Either way, you've got a young rookie quarterback. So they went out and they got Peter Skoronski with an 11th pick out of Northwestern, arguably the best offensive lineman in the draft. I don't even think it's that arguable, to be honest with you. But then Will Levis, like I said, the talent's there. Maybe he won't be able to get along with his teammates. We don't know yet. But at the very least, we know that the talent is there. And I know he's going to be a great quarterback if he can dial back his attitude. And then you all know my love for Tajay Spears. So that top of that half of that draft is something that I'm going to be scared to watch for the next several years.
I do want a special shout out to the Steelers too, going up and getting Jones, but then getting first round talent and Joey Porter in the second round for that trade that they made for Chase Claypool, right? I'm sure they got trade offers for a quarterback all throughout the night so that somebody could come up and get Will Levis. And they said, you know what? No, I'm good. We're gonna get family back into the Steelers organization. We're gonna bring Joey Porter in. And to be able to do that in the second round, it's just a couple of those guys that we all thought should have gone in the first. Brian Branch was one. We talked about Joey Porter's another. Should have probably gone in the first round, but made it to the second round to the team that was mocked over and over again to take him anyway. So they did a great job there. I'm not going to say good, bad, or indifferent about this team. I do want to say that it's entertaining that Green Bay did decide to load up on offensive talent once they sent the Aaron Rodgers packing. I found that amusing to no end. But time will tell on how those weapons did. I won't say that they did the best. I just thought it was entertaining. Joe, you had your finger up.
Go ahead, Justin. I think we were going to say the same thing.
No, I was just going to say that they also took Joe's 101 on the board. So
the steal of the draft. They got the best player in the draft in the third round, Darnell Washington.
The Steelers did.
Yeah. No, so they had a great and what's interesting about the Steelers is it's not so much that they did well because they're a well-run organization. They often do well. But most of the other teams we talked about either picked super early or had a lot of draft capital, had multiple first-round picks, right? It's hard. If you're good at what you do, it's hard to screw up if you have a couple of really early first-round picks, although some teams really managed to do it. Steelers didn't have an early first-round pick, and they came away with some really great talent, even though they were middle of the pack and didn't actually make any trades to get multiple more picks. So good job by them. That was well done as usual by that organization, which is why Mike Tomlin never has a losing season.
Yep. Seriously, it's such a well-run organization.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to do this as long as I originally had expected because we're at an hour and 2 minutes, but I do want to bring it up because it is a great article written by Coach Sheps. We talked about it earlier on our website. We have all kinds of articles, toiletsettles.com, click articles. Since we are a fantasy network, we don't just talk about the NFL. We talk about fantasy as well. And we do give out articles. One of the most recent articles put out there was top 20 dynasty landing spots for some of these rookies. Now it's super early, but you guys, people are drafting. I've got a couple of charity leagues. They want to draft right away. So, as soon as the draft was over, we started seeing these fantasy football drafts. So it's never too early to go to toiletstitle.com articles. Check out our fantasy football articles like this one from Coach. And this one is top 20 dynasty landing spots. So for this, I don't think anybody's going to argue Bijan Robinson isn't the top landing spot. He went to Atlanta, which I hate because I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. But if you're a fantasy football guy, 500 touches is on the horizon potentially for Bijan Robinson, given what Arthur Smith likes to do. I don't think there's a discussion to be had here other than he's a stud and he went to the right spot. Number 2 on this list is Jahmyr Gibbs to the Detroit Lions. This one's interesting to me, given that they gave a big contract to David Montgomery in the offseason. So while I see Jahmyr Gibbs as a really good player and a much better fit for that team, considering how bad they hated Dan Swift, Jahmyr Gibbs is an interesting one at 2 for me because he is going to have to compete, at least in the short term, with David Montgomery. Do you guys have any issues with Jahmyr Gibbs being number 2 here? Joe, I'll start with you.
No, it is interesting. Hey, let's remember Tyler Algier last year
Algier,
had
yeah.
like a little under 1,000 yards with well under 16 games started, I believe, if I recall correctly. So, but what I like about that too is that in the real NFL, you can keep your star running back healthy. But with Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit, I'm not a big Montgomery fan myself. I'll be honest with you. So for me, they're going to find they drafted Gibbs number 12 with purpose, and they've got clear cut plans where this guy is going to be an uber. He's going to be a super weapon. They're going to be deploying all over the place, out of the back, in the backfield, out of the backfield. They got big plans for this dude.
George, do you agree? Number 2, a good spot for Gibbs?
I'm not going to argue with it. Like it can go back and forth for me personally between Gibbs and Jackson Smith-Njigba. You can flip a coin. If it lands on tails, it'll be JSN. If it lands on heads, it's Jahmyr Gibbs. Number 2, number 3, you're splitting hairs. Honestly, it's fine.
Yeah, and I do want to get back to Joe's point on David Montgomery. And while I agree with you, he may not be more than just an okay or decent NFL running back, the Lions felt he was. They gave him a 3-year, $18 million contract. It's steep. They paid him like he was going to be a guy. Now, they had a chance to take another guy in the draft, and they used a lot of draft capital on him. So you can see them both being used. But with that contract, they're going to use David Montgomery a good bit as well.
Yeah, and maybe they got plans to use both. And you can do that. And with Montgomery, you're capable of doing that too. But I think they drafted Gibbs to. I don't think Montgomery's only going to see the ball. He's not just going to get 3 touches.
Well, especially with Jameson Williams
it's the way
being
the NFL
out, right?
is moving.
I was going to say, especially with Jameson Williams being out for 6 games, like they're going to have to rely on their running game a little bit more because they won't have him as a weapon. So it does make sense to bolster up your running game in that situation. Justin,
well, I was going to say,
you've been quiet,
and that's the way the NFL is going. Is you have very, very few true 3-down running backs. Like for the most part, every team has 2 really good running backs.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're both going to have their roles. They'll be fine.
Yeah, they were dancing in that war room like Thanksgiving dinner was finally ready. So they're going to use them. So I like that.
Detroit's creative offensively.
Yeah,
they've proven that.
So we've got a lot here. I'm going to let you guys go through it and decide which ones you want to talk about. There are 2 that I really want to talk about. The first one's Jackson Smith-Njigba, and George said you could have him at 2 or you could have him at 3. I'm not as high on the landing spot for Jackson Smith-Njigba. Now, the talent's there for me, but him landing in Seattle and being the 3rd wide receiver behind 2 talented wide receivers, and yeah, he is drafted to be a Tyler Lockett replacement. That's not going to be this year. It's probably going to be next year. But then is Geno Smith going to be there next year? Or are you going to be starting over with a rookie quarterback and then dealing with a rookie quarterback or a different quarterback that, DK Metcalf's going to be the guy. So can that other quarterback actually get the ball to a couple of people? That's why I'm a little bit lower on Jackson Smith-Njigba's landing spot and not necessarily the talent. But I want you guys to tell me I'm completely wrong like George did before we started the show. So I already heard it from George. Justin, you go ahead and tell me as well.
No, I don't think you're completely wrong, actually. I don't have JSN as high now just because I didn't like the landing spot as well. But at the same time, it's not a bad landing spot either. So, I mean, it's definitely a solid enough for especially for dynasty purposes. You got to believe this situation's only going to get better, and that's what this list was about. So I still would have had him in the top 5. So I'm cool with it. As far as who I like on this list, I'm going to keep it short and sweet just for time purposes. But Coach's top 5, like you said, was Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Devin Achane, and Rashee Rice. So a chain. That sounds actually pretty awesome. What I want to know is if you're viewing this, you hear Coach's top 5, put in the comments real quick who's different from your top 5.
And Joe, just looking at the list real quick, anybody, and again, I like what Coach did here. I think it's a very solid list, and it's right. We have to talk about stuff and debate. There is one guy I think should be higher on here. I'll leave that for last. Joe, what do you got? Okay.
Okay. No. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm here.
I
I was
gotcha,
actually writing down the guys. I did narrow it down. I narrowed it down to 3. And it is in no particular order because I like the possibility of what they can be getting right off the bat. I think what they could be right off the bat. Now I'm going to go away from the obvious ones like Bijan or even Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think could get off to a really hot start with his career in Detroit. I like Cedric Tillman in Cleveland. I think they need wide receiver help, and they got Deshaun Watson. And I really like Cedric Tillman a lot. I think that dude's a steal in the 3rd round. Tank Dell in Houston because, well, they've got their rookie quarterback, but also there's really like no other weapons really around there besides Tank Dell. And this guy is super capable of separating. So I thought I like that right there. And also Dalton Kincaid on the Bills. That is a passing offense. And they drafted that guy high. What was it? Second? They got him in the 2nd round, I believe.
First round.
In the 2nd round.
He was the back end of the first round.
Yeah. They got big plans for that guy. So I think I was hearing from maybe some of you guys that, or maybe it was just ESPN, but that they plan on using him not just as a tight end, but as a wide receiver as well. So I like Dalton Kincaid. Buffalo is a passing team. When Josh Allen is not running the ball, they're passing the ball. So I like those 3 as like the non super obvious Bijan Robinson type of pick.
And George, what do you got?
So I'm a big fan of talent over situation. Excuse me. Because talent ultimately wins out in the NFL. A lot of people didn't like AJ Brown when he landed in Tennessee. That turned out to be okay for fantasy purposes for AJ Brown. So I that's why, like JSN, I like him going to Seattle. His talent is ultimately going to win out. I think Geno Smith, they signed him to like a 3 or 4 year deal. He's not going anywhere for the next few years. I don't know why people think he is. He's not. I get it's Geno Smith, but like he played fantastic last year. He's actually got a competent organization for the first time in his entire career with stability in both the general manager and the head coach. So, and he was a highly drafted, touted player coming out of college. So I get it was Geno Smith, but like we've seen Geno Smith be bad, but we've also seen him be really freaking good. And he had no problem being able to feed both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf last year. So JSN is fine. The one I really, really like is he's got down here number 20, Jaden Reed to the Green Bay Packers. Packers always use wide receiver help. I get it's not Aaron Rodgers throwing the ball, it's Jordan Love. But like the Packers typically don't spend high draft capital on wide receivers. They spent pick number 50 on this kid. He looked fantastic at the Senior Bowl. So I really, really do like Jaden Reed to Green Bay. And the other one I like on here for fantasy purposes is number 13. It's the only quarterback coach put in the top 20, Anthony Richardson. And I know Justin was a little concerned. He said he's getting some Trey Lance vibes. You have to remember Anthony Richardson played in the SEC. He didn't play in Division II or wherever the Bisons play where
yeah, no, I'm not saying they're
Trey
anything like
plays
a big player. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, no, I know. But like he excelled against really good competition. I think he'll be fine for the Colts. I love the pick for the Colts, by the way. So those are the 3 that I like.
You're right. I blew that. I should have had Anthony Richardson in there. Totally.
So one you guys didn't talk about, but seems a little bit low on my board is Jordan Addison at 8 to Minnesota. I would move him up above a handful of these wide receivers. Reason being, he's playing on the opposite side, Justin Jefferson. He has Kirk Cousins throwing him the ball in a pass-heavy offense. A talented wide receiver playing opposite of a guy who's going to get double covered give me that guy a lot of the time. So, based off the offense, based off his talent, based off his quarterback, I really like Addison there, I think he should be higher on this list to me as far as places where he should be. Any arguments there?
I left that one for you, Jay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Because we talked about that one previously.
I do appreciate that, George. Well, we could probably talk about the draft all night and longer than the actual draft went on, because
you're right. You're right.
Because you get a group of guys together that love football. There's so much we could talk about. There's so much you guys have talked about. But at some point, this is an hour and 15 minutes in. It's actually 10:47 if you're watching this live, not listening to it later. So it's 10:47 p.m. We all probably have to go see families and get some sleep because we're all old men. So I think we're going to cut the conversation off there with the promise that we're going to be right back here next Sunday with another Sunday Night Live, at least most of us. And with that said, I do want to thank Justin, Joe, and George for coming on with me. I want to thank Toilets for Titles again for their draft coverage over the last weekend, because it was some of the best in the business. I won't say the best because I'm sure there's somebody out there who did it topless, and you can't beat topless. So I'll say some of the best out there. I do want to mention that we do have shows. George, don't do it, please. They don't make it the worst in the business. We do have shows running from Monday through the weekend. So there's constant NFL content coming and college football content coming to you from Toilets for Titles. Go to toiletsfortitles.com to see our articles, patreon.com/toiletsfortitles to get into our gilded chat. If you join our gilded chat, you'll have a heck of a time. It's more of this conversation, but a lot more cussing because we're allowed, unlike on YouTube. And again, if you're on YouTube and watching us there, like, subscribe, follow, all the stuff that's going to give us eventually monetized so we can do a lot more cool stuff. And special mention to Jared, who wasn't just on the coverage, but on the ground at the draft for us in Kansas City. A lot of cool reports there, and a very cool thing for Toilets to Titles to say that we have boots on the ground at the draft. It's something that we first year at the draft, but something we're going to do a lot more of. So thank you to Jared and the whole team. And Justin, I don't know if you had your finger up or if you were if we're good to wrap it up. Sorry,
I was just going to say hit the end screen.
Okay, and then guys, have a good night. Thank you for everything.